Hey, how's it going? My name is James, and today on the channel, we are going to be doing the Why Haven't I Read These Books tag. RJ over at RJ Reads was kind enough to tag me in this video, and I've seen a few other people do this tag before, and so I thought that this would be kind of a fun one to do. I have a few different books that this seemed just kind of like the best excuse to get to talk about those, and so yeah, thanks RJ for the tag, and we'll just jump straight into it. So the first book is a classic book that you haven't read. And I was actually listening to an explanation of this book a little while ago where someone was breaking down all the different themes and the overarching narrative of this book. And it occurred to me, I was like, why have I never read this? And that's Moby Dick by Herman Melville. It's something that I have always wanted to read, but it's so daunting, both for the language, just the prose, the way that it's written, the age, and the length. I mean, the length of the book. I'll have to remember, I can't remember what the video was that I was watching where they were kind of just explaining the plot of Moby Dick. And that wasn't even really the point of the video. The guy was kind of using it as a creative exercise on how to break something down, like if you're planning your own creative venture. But basically, he was talking about how Moby Dick is about the clash of human will and the elemental malice of nature. I'm like, that's a sick explanation of that. And talking about Ahab and Moby Dick and the eternal struggle between the two, between man and nature. I don't know. It sold me. And so from then on, I kind of slipped Moby Dick a little bit higher up on my interest level. I have no idea whenever I'll be able to read it, if anytime soon. But for the sake of the question, that's the classic that I want to read. The second one is a fiction book, and I have already talked about this book on the channel. I talked about it in a really old video that I did back in, I guess that would have been June, about my summer, July TBR, and that TBR just completely went out the window with how crazy work was this summer. The fiction book that I want to read is still The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. I've seen a lot of people praise it. I've seen a lot of people absolutely hate it. And I think that a lot of times the best art is controversial. The fact that people have strong feelings about this book one way or another, whether they really like it or they really hate it, makes me want to read it even more. I love mysteries. I love thrillers. I love gritty stories. And I've seen the movie, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily think that the movie is the best adaptation of the book, but I am just very, very curious about it. I mean, outside of the movie, I don't know anything about the book. So I've seen the movie adaptation. I have the general understanding of the plot beats and stuff, but I saw the movie a long time ago, and I think that it's long enough ago that this would still be fresh. So question number 2, the answer is A Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The girl. Not a girl, though there's one, the girl. Whatever. Question number 3 is a nonfiction book. And I kind of am cheating a little bit. There's 2 that I kind of wanted to talk about. One is a little less nonfiction than the other. Well, I think his books are technically nonfiction. I'll talk about that one in a second, though. The one that answers the question the most accurately, I think, is Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. I have had this book on my shelf for a while. Basically what this book is about, it's about screenwriting. It's about writing scripts, but it is also just a fantastic book on story structure, on narrative. You'll see a lot of authors talk about this book in addition to screenwriters, people who work in the film or video industry. And it really seems to just be at the top of a lot of people's lists about storytelling and how to structure a story from a very technical aspect. The basic idea of it, talking about, if you want to establish a hero, have them save a cat. If you want to establish a villain, have them kick a puppy. Like, that's kind of I think that this is kind of where that idea comes from. And so this has been sitting on my shelf for a while, and we're very pro cat around here, I guess. And so I definitely want to read Save the Cat sometime soon, because I think that would just be beneficial for me, both in my reading and in my job and my other creative ventures. The other one that I wanted to talk about is an author that I feel like I flew through a lot of his books just way back. I listened to them, I read them, and they were just so gripping to me. And that is Pirate Hunters by Robert Kurson. Robert Kurson, I think that basically what happens is he novelizes true events. And so he has a book like about the Apollo missions, which was really good. I think it's called Rocket Men, and that book was phenomenal. But the books that got me hooked on his storytelling and his writing style. The one that really hooked me was Shadow Divers, which is basically about this team of scuba divers in the 90s who discover a German U-boat off the coast of New Jersey. And back in the 90s, scuba diving was way more dangerous. You couldn't go nearly as deep. That was a huge historical discovery. And so these guys are pushing the limits of scuba diving. And I mean, you want to talk about someone who can create just stress, just tension. Robert Kurson is a phenomenal author, a very visual author. They don't read like history books or like nonfiction. His writing is not dry, I guess. I think it is the best way to put it. A lot of fiction can feel, or nonfiction can feel very dry sometimes. And Robert Kurson, all of his books are very, very engaging, very fast paced. I love history. And so he spends a lot of time diving into the history He spends a lot of time diving into the history portions of the U-boat and trying to figure out basically where this U-boat came from. And then there were people who died trying to dive, because I think it was like 250 feet down or whatever. And so they were really like pushing the limits of what was possible with scuba diving at that time. And so if you haven't read Shadow Divers or listened to it, man, those books are so great. And Pirate Hunters basically, I think, is about that same team of scuba divers diving a wrecked pirate ship or trying to find it and discover it. They're like real world treasure hunters. It's super cool. Just super, super cool people. So yeah, if you haven't checked out Robert Kurson, I highly recommend it. You should. Number 4 is a genre book. And given that this is a science fiction and fantasy channel, and given that I don't have a lot of other genres available to me, I kind of just picked one. This was my excuse to pick a book that is on my TBR, but only like it's like floating. If I finish everything else that I want to read in a month, then it's on that list that I kind of want to slide some of these books in and try and get an extra book in. But the one that I picked was The Lies of Lockemora by Scott Lynch. I've heard really amazing things about it. I think Murphy Napier was the first person that I watched a review on or watched somebody just gush about this book. But I love heists. I love the camaraderie. I love found family tropes and stuff like that. And so it just seems like a book that I would love. It's also a book that I have not looked into at all. I genuinely enjoy not knowing really anything about a book whenever I get into it. I mean, I'll read the back and that's it. I don't like trying to read ahead or watch videos of people explaining it too much. But I think Murphy had it on one of her favorite series of all time videos or something like that, and just kind of talked about some of the themes and the plot and the structure and how the characters are written, and it just sounded like something that I would like. I have had it sitting on my shelf for a while, and it's just been one of those books that if I ever am able to get ahead of my reading list for the month, I would love to be able to slide that in and try and read that. So that's my answer for number 4 is The Lies of Lockemora. Number 5, the book owned for the longest time but not read yet. I really had to kind of stare at my shelves for a little while to figure this one out, because I kind of got rid of a lot of books whenever I moved out of my parents' house. We got rid of a lot of stuff. So I kind of had to sit there and think that I definitely knew that I thought that I had books that I guess I had gotten rid of. But one that I know for a fact has been on my shelf for a long time is Silence by Shusaku Endo. I bought this book basically right after seeing the movie. I think so that was like 2017. So honestly, I've wanted to read this basically since 2017, and it's just been sitting on my shelf. And this was kind of just where my eyes gravitated whenever I looked at my shelf. And so, yeah, I guess my answer would be Silence by Shusaku Endo as the book that has been on my shelf for the longest, and I just haven't read it yet. That's the answer to the questions. I guess I'm supposed to tag people now. So I'm going to go ahead and tag Jordan from Jordan Reads and Kyle from Read by Kyle. I think that's all I've got for this one. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.